In the heart of the Sonhara Valley, where golden fields stretched endlessly beneath a sky so blue it seemed to touch the earth, there lived a woman named Zara. She was like the first rays of dawn, warm, bright, and full of life. But there was one thing about her that puzzled the villagers. No matter where she was, no matter how beautiful the surroundings, Zara never felt at home. She had been born in Sonhara, yet she spoke of the valley as though it were a cage. When the fields bloomed with maize and millet, she sighed that the air was too dry. When the rains came, turning the land lush and green, she complained that the mud made her uneasy. At night, when the wind carried the scent of ripe mangoes through her window, she would shut it and grumble that the breeze was too strong. The villagers whispered among themselves. "Perhaps she was born under a wandering star," said the elders, shaking their heads. "She is ungrateful," muttered others. But Zora did not care for their words. She only knew that she longed for something else, though she could not name what. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Zora sat outside her hut, staring at the horizon. A deep sigh escaped her lips, carrying the weight of an invisible burden. "Perhaps my happiness is waiting for me elsewhere," she murmured. For years, she had watched travelers pass through Sonhara, merchants carrying spices from faraway lands, storytellers who spoke of cities where the streets were lined with lanterns, and hunters who had seen rivers so wide they swallowed the sun at dusk. Every tale made her heart ache with longing. What if she, too, was meant for someplace else? What if her spirit was never meant to settle in the valley of her birth? And so, after years of restlessness, she made a decision. She would leave Sonhara and search for a place where she truly belonged. She packed her belongings in a small cloth bundle, some food, a change of clothes, and a carved wooden pendant her mother had given her before she passed. As she stepped onto the dusty path leading out of the village, the elders watched in silence. Some pitied her, others scoffed. But the old herbalist, Mama Nia, simply smiled and said, "The river must flow until it meets the truth of itself." Her first stop was Neander, the great city beyond the valley. As she entered its bustling streets, her senses were overwhelmed. The smell of roasting maize, the sound of merchants calling out their wares, the sight of buildings that touched the clouds. It was nothing like Sonhara. It was alive, vibrant, full of possibilities. For days, she wandered the city, marveling at its wonders. She danced to the rhythm of street drummers, tasted spiced meats she had never known, and gazed at silk fabrics woven with golden threads. "Perhaps this is where I was meant to be," she thought, feeling a flicker of hope. But as the weeks turned into months, something began to shift. The once lively streets now felt suffocating. The noise that had once excited her became unbearable. The people, always in a hurry, never stopped to share stories under the moon like they did in Sonhara. A longing crept into her heart, silent but persistent. So she left Neander and journeyed to the quiet hills of Karobo. The air was cool, the trees stood tall like ancient guardians, and the river sang soft lullabies. She breathed in deeply, feeling a calm she hadn't known in the city. "This is it," she told herself. "Here, I will find peace." She settled in a small hut, waking each morning to misty skies and the chirping of birds. She learned to weave baskets from the village women and gathered herbs from the forest. But soon, the stillness that had once comforted her began to feel empty. "The nights are too cold," she grumbled. "The hills are too steep." And so, she set off once again, traveling across distant lands. She crossed deserts where the sand whispered secrets to the wind, waded through rivers where the water glowed silver under the moon, and climbed mountains where the air was thin but the world stretched wide before her. Each place held beauty, wonder, and something new. Yet, no matter where she went, no matter what marvels she witnessed, satisfaction remained a stranger. Years passed, and Zora's feet grew weary. Her hair, once dark as midnight, now carried streaks of silver. One evening, as she sat by a quiet riverbank, she stared into the water. The girl who had once longed for more was now a woman with lines on her face. She saw herself reflected in the ripples, and in that moment, the truth struck her like thunder on an open plain. It had never been the valley, the city, the hills, or the deserts. It had been her own heart, always searching, never settling. A deep sigh left her lips, but this time, it was not one of longing. It was a sigh of knowing. The next morning, she turned her steps homeward, retracing the journey she had once taken with so much hope. When she arrived in Sonhara, the villagers gathered, astonished. "So, you have returned?" they asked. Zora nodded. "I spent years chasing something that was never out there. I thought I needed a new place to be happy, but happiness was something I had to carry within me." The old herbalist, Mama Nia, smiled knowingly. "Oh, child. The river always returns to its source." From that day onwards, Zora vowed to see the good in every situation. She no longer sighed at the dry air, nor complained about the rain. She found joy in the scent of ripe mangoes and the sound of the wind through the fields. And like a charm, happiness never eluded her again. And my dear listener, perhaps this is the lesson we all must learn. Sometimes, what we are searching for is not in the world outside, but within us. From Zora's experiences, we can learn 3 lessons. First, a restless heart will never find peace in a new place if it has not found peace where it stands. Second, no land, no home, no city can fill the emptiness that only contentment can satisfy. And third, happiness is not something we stumble upon, it is something we choose, wherever we are. As the wise say, the bird that flies the farthest will still return to its nest when the sun sets.